that is the initiation of the virgin, because you need to know how that works in your body so that you can use sexuality to reach enlightenment.
Welcome to Follow Your Heartsong, where we reclaim pleasure, break taboos, and awaken to our deepest desires. I'm Rose Heartsong, bringing you raw, unapologetic conversations on sex, spirit, and self-liberation. Let's dive in. Good evening, Laguna Beach, and out there in the world. My name's Rose Heartsong, and you're listening to Follow Your Heartsong. We're live every single Sunday from 9 to 10 p.m. And this show, we like to talk about the taboo. So we like to talk about sex, spirituality, and holistic healing here, and dive into the curiosity of the taboo and making it more normal. You know, I love to question things and get curious about it. And for those of you who have been here on the show for a minute now, know that I have a deep, deep passion for Mary Magdalene and her story and reclaiming her story. And this Tuesday on the 22nd was Mary Magdalene's feast day, which is an international feast day in honor of Mary Magdalene, claimed by the Pope in 2016. And so it is a potent Magdalene week, and it just happened. It wasn't the plan, but then I always say that Magdalene orchestrates everything. But my favorite author of my favorite Mary Magdalene book is here in the studio with me live right now, which I'm really excited to introduce her. Her name is Wencke Braathen, and she is the author of a book called Rituals in Sacred Stone. And it's kind of like a love story meets historical fiction, meets magic, all about Mary Magdalene. And so welcome, Wencke. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Rose. It's wonderful to be here and to have this opportunity to talk about the thing we're both passionate about. It's lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely. My dear sister, Roxanne Ruby, who will eventually be on the show when she's back in the US, she gifted me this book, and it's a massive one. Your original one, we'll go into that. And she gifted me this book, and I went into it, and it was one of those books that basically transformed completely. Like, it's one of those ones that you go in and you can't stop. And it's a little bit, in all honesty, it was a little challenging at the beginning. And when I talk to people and share your book with people, they're like, oh, it's hard at the beginning. I'm like, you gotta get through the first couple chapters and you won't stop. And it initiated something inside of me. It was almost like a permission slip to believe what I intuitively already was believing and I already knew to be true. And your book, it was almost like a cellular memory that I knew was present, but it was almost like, oh my gosh, somebody else understands what I'm going through, and she wrote it. And so it really inspired me and activated me, and it was a catalyst for me. And then it was actually Roxanne's idea. She reached out to you on Facebook. And I was like, I want to reach out to her on Facebook. That's a really good idea. And so I reached out to you on Facebook, and I was like, your book is amazing. And then I always jokingly say I adopted you, or we adopted each other.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
And we became really good friends.
Absolutely.
And now we're here. I don't know. That was a couple years ago. I think that was actually Lightning in a Bottle is right before Lightning in a Bottle, not this year or last year, but the year before that. I reached out to you because we do a massive rose ritual. And I sent you some videos about that. And I remember being like, look at this amazing rose ritual.
And also I told you I was coming.
Yes.
I was coming to LA that time.
Yes.
So we met.
Yes. And we met. And I remember after we had lunch, my mouth hurt from smiling.
We spent
so
4
much.
hours at that restaurant.
I know. And I got a parking ticket. I totally forgot about time.
For those of you who are listening who don't really understand who Mary Magdalene is, I would love to hear in your words, Wencke, who is Mary Magdalene?
Have you ever had a super sexy, fun night and you're in the heat of the moment, you didn't care about any fluids, and then afterwards you crawl into your sheets and they're a little damp or a little crusty? Well, I have a really fun solution for you because honestly, towels kind of suck and they're not waterproof. Let's be real. They're rough and not waterproof. So you want to get yourself a splash blanket. They're a super lush, soft, luxurious, waterproof blanket that you have no idea is waterproof when you feel it. No crinkles, no sounds, super high quality, easy to throw in the wash and dryer, and lasts for years. I've had one for 4 years and it's in great condition. You can head over to splashblanket.com and use my discount code Rose Heartsong for 10% off your first order. And I'd love to hear about how it goes. So reach out to me on Instagram at Rose Heartsong and tell me about your splash blanket moments. I'd love to hear from you soon. Now let's get back to the episode.
She's very present in the biblical stories in the Gospels. And she's the one who's present at every very important ritual that's happening in the Gospels. She is there for anointing with oil the head of Jesus. She does that ritual. And then she also does the washing of his feet and the cleaning with her hair. And that has sometimes been attributed to other people, but most of the Gospels attributed to her. She was present at the crucifixion, and she was there at the resurrection. Plus, she was the first one to come to the other disciples and tell them that he was risen, that he had risen. These are the most important parts of where she was at. And when I got interested in her, I wondered, where did she learn to work with rituals like that? What's the importance of anointing his head with oil, especially with that spikenard oil that is being talked about in the biblical stories? Where does that tradition comes from? And then I started to look into the various mystery schools that existed in their lifetime, in their time frame. And there are many of them. In fact, there was a whole series of mystery schools located both in Egypt, in France, in southern France, and all the way into England. And they were all relating to each other. You had the Celtic ones coming then from Ireland, England, into France. And they had their kind of goddesses and gods that they worked with. And then you had the Egyptian goddesses and gods that were also in a different kind of schooling. And then you had everything happening in Ephesus, which is then now a town in Turkey. But that was a different school again. And each of them had their expertise and a great respect for each other. Even though they might be coming from different belief systems and in different traditions and different cultures, they still had great respect for each other. There wasn't like what we have today of this competition between religions, which really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But in their time, you could go from, like, Mary Magdalene started at the Pium and Alexandria, which was connected to the big library in Alexandria. This is documented that this place existed. And it was a huge mystery school that did rituals, did all this mystical training, but was also just a library where people came from all over the place, or all over the world, to study at this particular library and be part of the university that was connected to it. I figured out that she was of the Benjamin tribe, and the Benjamin tribe had traveled from Israel and south through Saudi Arabia, and were kind of part of the whole Queen of Sheba and Solomon and the relationship there. And then they went west from there and into Ethiopia, and then they traveled north on the Nile and ended up then in northern Egypt. So I figured if she was of that tradition, she would end up in Alexandria and she would have studied at the Serapeum. So that's why I'm putting her there. So that's a little bit of my interpretation, but it's obvious that she would have gone to one of the mystery schools of their time.
So for those who are listening and don't know what a mystery school is, what is a mystery school?
It would be a temple that would also function like having novices, as in training to be nuns and monks, but they would train to be educated within the system that was within that school, that particular center. And the centers were often not just a religious center with a temple that you do a religious, like a mass type of thing, or a big ceremony for the different seasons. But it would also be that they had a certain healing principle, a certain healing technique that they would be working on in that particular place, or even a specific initiation that they'd be working on. Like the Ephesus one was connected to Artemis. So Artemis was the goddess that was kind of the protectress of that place.
Yeah.
So everything centered around that would be teachings of what she brought to, like, she's also Diana, who's the huntress. So she would know about certain herbs, she would know about certain healing modalities. That would be her thing. So you would go to that university to learn about those things. Whereas,
So it's basically like a spiritual university
Yeah,
to learn
very
the
much.
mysteries.
Yeah.
Mysteries of herbalism or hermetic magic or Kabbalah, like ancient Kabbalah, things like that. That would be the definition of what we would see now is like we go to universities to study science and math and, programming now, whereas they had these education platforms back then that I think are being rewoken today in online portals a lot. There's a lot of different mystery schools that are being remembered.
Yeah, remembered is a good word, because I've learned that we carry the whole entire history of the human race within each of the cells of our body, within the DNA system. So we're now in this tremendous changing of humanity itself on the earth at the moment. The astrology is talking about that. You can see it in what's going on, and that there is a huge shift in consciousness going on at the moment. And with that, you get all these memories coming up, growing, waking up in people's cell memory. And that's what we're seeing with this fantastic new interest in Mary Magdalene and her life, and people wanting to know, what did she know? Why was she interesting? Why did she become so close to Christ? Why did that happen like that? And why did the church try to simply erase her from history? Why, or give her such a bad reputation that people would ostracize against her instead of seeing the importance that she has in the story of Jesus and all the work that he did? Because she's so super important with him. She's the anchor point for him, because
she anointed him.
Yes.
And Christ means the anointed one. So she initiated that ritual and that tradition and that path to follow.
And now we're getting into the word initiation. And a lot of these mystery schools in various places would have their own form of initiation. And you would start learning the kind of subjects in the schools, and then you go on. And if you're interested in initiations and have the capacity for that, you would be invited to be part of that. But the different places had different ways of initiations. And the way she treated Jesus, the way she prepared him for the sacrifice that he did, which I can get more into what the meaning of that was, followed more of an Egyptian tradition, because he follows the journey of Osiris in the crucifixion and resurrection, where you're going into a process and you're unconscious and look dead for 3 days, and then you wake up on Clue on the third day. But you're under the protection of the teachers all through that process. And she went through that process herself, so she knew all about it. And I believe that he also used that initiations with some of his disciples who were interested in that. Lazarus was also gone. He was also dead for 3 days. And Jesus calls him out. I think that happened a little differently. I think Lazarus asked for that initiation, and that Mary Magdalene actually helped him into that. But, when he was coming out of it, she needed a little extra help, because he was in a different situations than in the temple. In the temple, there were specific rooms for these things to happen. And once you're doing a ritual repeatedly, and you do it in a space that's made of stone, the stones will remember. The vibration you created with that initiation will be remembered within the stones.
And that's why it's called rituals in sacred stone.
Rituals in sacred stone, absolutely.
Why do you think that if so many people were doing these initiations of going into, would you say the underworld for 3 days?
Mhm.
Why do you think Jesus is the most popular or famous, or like why are we still so emotionally and mentally, physically, spiritually attached in such a massive way in the world today to Jesus' story going through that initiation? Like, why is it him and not, oh, this was something that was done and he did it too?
Because we aren't being taught that it happened to anybody else, that this was something you could do in various different places, and that the journey of Osiris was a process that people were very aware of. In the Egyptian hieroglyphs and all this, you see the journey of Osiris being described, where he goes to the underworld and he goes through the evaluation, kind of, where you measure the feather versus the weight of the heart.
Mhm.
And your heart has to be lighter than the weight of a feather.
Mhm.
And other initiations are where you go step by step down into the underworld, and for each step of the way, you need to give up some of the things that give you power in the world, and you end up hanging on a tree at the end, naked and forlorn, and you've given up everything you have. And then you achieve, you find the wisdom. The wisdom comes to you because you have cleared everything else out of your mind and of your being.
That's
And
so
then you go
interesting.
back up again. You go back up again. And for each of the steps that you took before, you get now the powers back that you had, but with a new understanding, with a very different understanding of what it means.
That's so interesting because I've always been so curious as to why the world worships him, Jesus, on a cross, being nailed and suffering and blood coming down and this like very gory. It's almost, I was actually listening to a podcast by the author of Existential Kink, and she was saying that Jesus is the most profound example of a kink experience. Like we were in this honoring and this devotion of suffering.
Yeah.
And this deep moment of suffering, but he's on the cross, which is also a cross is made out of wood, which is a tree, which it might be interesting, like the symbolism of that initiation to that moment of time. And then it's also, as you were telling about these initiations, like into the underworld and each step, it's making me think about, the story of when we get to the gates of heaven, when we die and we go to talk to God and we say, this is what Christianity says a lot is, did you repent and did you ask Jesus into your heart? And if you ask Jesus into your heart, then you can go into heaven. And it's like this pearly gates, and it's almost so similar in a way. They're very similar stories.
Yeah, in a way you can say that, that you arrive somewhere and
You're weighed.
Yeah, and you're weighed a little bit of your value. Yeah, that's also indeed a similar story. It's just that the church has made it into such a sort of punishment story.
Yeah.
And Jesus never said anything like that.
Uh-uh.
And that's not part of his package or his teaching of any sort. That part of the story where he actually totally dies and he totally comes back to life through some miracle, that is much more used by the church to create this story that they could use, because that is overlapped with the Romans had a god named Mithras, and Mithras was very popular among the soldiers. And Mithras also was born on the December 25th, and he also was born by a virgin, and he died and was sacrificed by his own people. You have these parallel stories, and I still don't know exactly where the differentiation is here in these two. But I know that the Roman Empire ended in 325, and suddenly we have the Holy Roman Empire, which continued then with the Pope and Constantine in 325, and all the continuation of all that.
And the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah, that was in 325. And from then on, we suddenly have popes and archbishops and stuff, and everything became much more organized and much more streamlined, that this is how this belief goes. Whereas before that, it was a lot more separated, many small congregations that each had a little different take on how this story went. Similar to the mystery schools that also had a little different take on what is enlightenment, what is development of human beings. And in this place, we develop like this. This is what we emphasize here. And in another place, it would be something else. So in Egypt, they had this story of the journey of Osiris. And it doesn't mean that you die. It means more that you're given some herbs and you go through a process and you prepare for this initiation. And then you appear dead for 3 days. And the only example we have of that in modern literature is actually Romeo and Juliet. Juliet also took a poison and appeared death for 3 days. And then she came back on clue. What I'm trying to say is that that kind of a process is possible.
Yeah. No, it was more common. The thing that I still don't understand is why is Jesus' story the highlighted one?
Yeah.
Like, why is that the most famous of them all, specifically him?
Yeah.
I don't know if we know.
During the first years where you have more the Gnostic Gospels and the Gnostic people, that's not the right word. That knowledge, Gnosticism is a form of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
The crucifixion was not their emphasis.
Mm-mm.
The emphasis was that he had gone through the process. And the emphasis was also his message of love. Because that is God, that is Jesus' message. And of anchoring love in a very physical way in the earth. Because we were going through a paradigm shift similar to what we're going through now. We were going from the age of, Aries into Pisces. And right now, as we speak, we're going from Pisces into Aquarius.
We're in Aquarius.
We're in Aquarius, but
happened.
it's a little bit. It takes a little bit of time, so we're still in process there. And right now, we're experiencing then the old expressing itself, showing kind of the nastiest, most negative, most horrifying ways of patriarchy showing itself. That's what we're seeing right
Throwing
now.
a temper tantrum.
Yeah, they're having a temper tantrum. I put it even worse. I said that it's all the pimples are bursting, it's all the barf coming out in the streets. It's
a detox.
Yeah, it's a
way.
detox. That's exactly what it is. It's a detox. So when we get through with that and we've got barfed enough, then we will find our new balance again. And we'll find a new level of looking at things, and we'll come from a much more Aquarian viewpoint. And Aquarians are very different than Pisceans.
So for those of you that are listening, it's Pluto, right? It's Pluto is in Aquarius.
Pluto shifts very slowly through the age of the astrological signs. And it's, you're right, it's very slowly now going into Aquarius. We've been doing that since, what,
like the 60s? Yeah, so this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. That's what it's talking
Absolutely.
About. Okay, so I kind of want to shift the conversation a little bit. So this is something that I've been a little bit neutral in how I speak about it out into the world. I've talked about it with my friends and family and in my close-knit retreats. You've been to both my retreats, Watchtower retreats. I talk about it there, but there's something about your book that's very bold. And the boldness is that it talks about the marriage and the romance of Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ, and their love story, and their sex life, and their intimacy, and the story of their human love and their hearts and all of that. And that is something that I am not as bold about. I'm like, we know the facts, right? She was at his crucifixion. She was part of the burial party. She was the first he resurrected to. She helped initiate him as Christ. She was an important role in his life. And for those of you who are listening right now, we are on KXFM, Leganese Community Radio. And I have a guest here, Wencke Braathen. This is Rose Heartsong on Follow Your Heartsong. And we are talking about Mary Magdalene. And did you know that she has a gospel? And there was a gospel that was discovered from her. And 3 copies have been discovered. It was discovered in the late 1800s. It wasn't published until 1955. Wasn't available for the public as it is today until 1995. And there is a scripture in it I would like to read right now, and then we can dive into the sexy romance of your book with Mary Magdalene and Jesus Christ. This is Mary 6:1. Peter said to Mary, "Sister, we know that the Savior loved you more than the rest of the women. Tell us the words of the Savior you remember, which you know and we do not, nor how we heard them." And Mary answered and said, "What is hidden from you, I will tell you." She began to tell them these words.
Let's be real. Most people are starving for a real connection, hot, steamy sex, and honest communication. In my private coaching, we strip it all down. We explore tantra, kink, power dynamics, and the parts of you you've been taught to hide. I help you name your deepest desires, clear that shame, and stop settling so you can become sexually sovereign. That means your sexuality doesn't run you, you own it. You move with intention, not impulse. Whether you're in a couple or flying solo, I am your sex coach, your truth mirror, and your no BS cheerleader for living a bold, ethical, and turned on life. Apply now for a complimentary 30-minute consultation at roseheartsong.com if you're ready to stop performing and start thriving in your erotic truth. Talk to you soon.
This is, for those who are listening, factually, unfortunately, pieces of the gospel are missing. So the answer that I'm about to say is super, it's almost like you're on the edge of your seat and you want to know the answer, but that's not there. She said, she said, "I saw the Lord in a vision, and I said to him, 'Lord, I saw you today in a vision.' And he answered and said to me, 'Blessed are you that you do not waver at seeing me. For where the mind is, there's the treasure.' I said to him, 'Lord, now does one who sees the vision see it with the soul or with the spirit?' And the Savior answered and said, 'One does not see the soul with the soul or with the spirit, but with the mind, which is between the two, sees the vision.'" And then we have 4 pages missing, which is so incredibly frustrating.
It's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy because I think it's, in my perspective and my point of view, I think those 4 pages are like the core essence of what Jesus actually spoke. That's my mystery. That's my story. That's what I'm telling myself. I don't know if it's true. Anyways,
That makes a lot of sense, though.
it does.
Yeah,
And
makes
it's
a lot of
hidden
sense.
from us. I don't know if
Because
somebody found it or if it's been chosen to be taken out. I don't know.
it will be a while until we know they have the answer for that. But Jesus is also the one who says somewhere else in the Gospels, in his Gospels, he says, she's the one who got the point. She's the one who understood it. Learn from her. Forgotten which Gospel that appears in, but he says that. And of course, then the disciples get all whiffled out about that, and Peter goes into his own power struggle thing. But he says that. And one of the reasons we can assume that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were married is the fact that she was with him at the crucifixion and took him down from the cross and took him to the burial place and cleaned his body. And only the wife would be allowed to do that. If she hadn't been married to him, it would have been given to his mother, and she was there as well. But Mary Magdalene was the one who did that kind of work.
Well, that's common sense even now. You can't have access to dead relative or dead people unless you're married or a relative to them. It's a tradition still today. The other factor that I like to talk about is that Jesus was a rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, because in our more modern day perspective, people see popes and sisters or priests and so forth, and they're usually celibate and they don't have that interaction of intimacy.
Yeah, all the Catholics.
Okay, yes. And as a rabbi, it's required to be married to become a rabbi. And this is the one that I think is interesting, is it would have been extremely radical for a rabbi to not be married.
Yeah, very unusual.
It would have been very unusual, and there would have been a lot of texts written about it.
Yes.
And there is none.
There's
We
none.
haven't found one.
There's none. And he would not have been respected.
No.
Also because I'm not totally an expert on this, but in what I've understood of the Jewish tradition, the woman, the mother, has a very strong responsibility within the family. She's the one who lights the candles on the
Yes.
on the
I know this.
Sabbath.
I'm Jewish.
Yeah, you're Jewish, so you know it.
Yeah.
But I think this is important for the story. And isn't it also that if a child is born in a mixed marriage where there's one of the parents is Jewish and the other one is not, it's something
It's
else?
always the woman. It has to go through the woman's bloodline. But that, in my belief, and I'm not, like, I am Jewish and I lived in Israel and I studied Judaism for years, and I speak Hebrew. So I have some knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not an expert, but I believe that is because I believe it's because a lot of Jewish people went through a lot of suffering for thousands and thousands of years, specifically the Holocaust. And there was a lot of rape that happened. And so at the time, they didn't know if the mother, like they always knew who the mother was. We didn't know until like semi-recently with DNA testing who the father was.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like that way of keeping it safe was you always know who the mom is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the tradition and where that comes from. But I don't know.
I think it goes back
I've heard
to that mother is the one who educates the children when they're little. And she sets the tone of the home.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So mother is extremely important. And a rabbi would definitely need a wife who held the home together and took care of the children and educated the children in their traditions. So then we come to the question of whether Jesus and Mary Magdalene had children. And there are some hints about that. But if we think about it, if they were a married couple and they were of the traditions of she's of the Benjamin tribe and he's of the Judah tribe, and these two are supposed to come together and anchor the new teachings in the earth in Israel. But if you have all that you're supposed to do all that, and you're basically the king and queen, the next king and queen of that country. But the country we're talking about is then occupied by the Roman Empire at the moment. And you know who you are, and you know how you know the rituals for how to anchor things in the ground. And you know what to do. But you still want to keep whatever you're doing and your own identity extremely hidden. You don't need the attention of the Roman Empire. Now, Jesus couldn't avoid that because he was teaching to multitudes, which again caused uproar within the temple itself, which is actually the Jewish temple, but they were also working with the Romans. So he was the one who brought back the older traditions of how to work with the temple.
Mm-hmm.
And for them to have offspring, the Roman Empire would have liked for Jesus to be dead. They did the best they could to kill him. They tried really hard.
They did a good job. Ish.
And one thing worse than a dead hero, one thing worse than a hero is a dead hero.
Yeah.
And what's even worse is if you have a resurrected hero, then you can just give up. He became extremely popular. And for them to have offspring would be very, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. They hid it. They hid their marriage and they hid the child.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the juicy bits because you got some sexy scenes in there about their lovemaking and their rituals and their intention. And one of the things I love about your book when it comes to sex and sexuality is you're bringing in the ritual aspect of it and the spiritual aspect of it. And I think a lot of times when it comes to sex and sexuality, unfortunately, modern Christianity has taken sexuality completely and turned it into sin. Even like, I know that not every single person, I don't want to say everybody, and energetically, and the frequency is I was talking to a Christian recently and they called sex the original sin.
Okay.
And, that it's a bad thing, but you can do it with your partner in marriage, but don't talk about it. And you don't learn about it, you don't study about it. But it is the quote unquote original sin. And then I went down this rabbit hole. I'm like, what is this about? What is this original sin about? And then I did some research and I realized that somehow at some point, the fact that Eve ate seduced, right? Quote unquote, seduced Adam into eating the forbidden fruit. And then they saw each other naked. And because they saw each other naked, then they must have had sex, which she doesn't say, by the way.
It doesn't.
And the act, and then the snake, right, is the seductive creature, which can represents sex a lot in culture. And the snake is the seductive creature that inspires Eve to eat the apple, and then she seduces Adam, and then they have the original sin, which is sex.
Mm.
And then that was them disobeying God. So that's how that kind of story philosophy came in. So what I love about your book, for those of you listening, I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be honest because I am honest. I think everybody that I know that has read your book, like, kind of self-pleasures to like the sex scene. It's hot and it's juicy and it's edgy. And you're talking about an erotic experience with Jesus having epic, mind-blowingly magical sex with his wife.
Yes, I did.
And you even made it more edgy because you had them have sex before they got married. Didn't you?
What was that?
Didn't you have them have sex before they got married?
Yes, I did.
You had them have sex before.
Yes.
They consummated sex before their wedding day. They were already betrothed.
Yes, they were betrothed.
They were betrothed, but they were teenagers and they wanted to explore and try something. So that is edgy.
Yes, it's edgy.
It's taboo.
And it might not be totally true, but I wanted to put it in there.
I mean,
to challenge exactly what you were talking about, to also because they're raised in different traditions. She's raised in more of an Egyptian tradition, and he's then more in a traditional Jewish tradition. So she learns a more ritual form of sexuality, and she learns about the energy fields that you awaken in a good sex experience. And they want her to know that. So they have this initiation in the temple that she does with an assigned priest of the temple to have sex with her. But to do a lot more than that, he explains all these energy fields in her body and how they all work, and wants her to experience that through her body. So that is the initiation of the virgin. Because you need to know how that works in your body so that you can use sexuality to reach enlightenment, because it's such a powerful way of sending a huge energy field through all your chakras. And you wake up your whole entire body. And if you really get going on this, we're familiar with the caduceus symbol, with the medical symbol, with the rod in the middle and then the snakes going up, and then you have wings on the top and a little angel figure or something on the top of it.
Mm-hmm.
That actually shows us how that energy field flows through our body. And in fact, I just talked to someone earlier today that you awaken the snakes in the base of your body. And with all the sexual stimulation, all the sexual excitement that you can get to, you can get these snakes to start crawling up your body and enter into each of the chakras as they come up. And when the snakes come to the top of it, to your head, they will secrete a drop from their mouths. Yeah, it's a soma substance of some sort. And it goes into that middle channel going through the body. On the caduceus too, there's a staff that's in the middle there. And it goes straight down to your first chakra again. And the rod will open up like a flower, like the stem inside a flower that's waiting for the seeds to come to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, if you can have that complete experience in a conscious manner during a sexual experience, this is a step towards enlightenment, because it's the clearing of your chakras. It's the new energy that you are creating at your pineal gland. And you are connecting your seventh chakra and your first. And this is very important to understand, that enlightenment is not a heady thing. Enlightenment is a body thing. You need to anchor that light inside your body. You need to introduce light into every cell of your body and anchor it in there, which is a very physical experience. Okay, if you want my opinion, I think the Christian church has done their best to prevent people to get to enlightenment, because they made sexuality sinful and bad and taboo and awful. And they've made people, they've blocked the education about it. So nobody knows this kind of stuff.
I know.
And And we also, according to the church, you're supposed to relate to God only from your head. Now we're talking a little bit about relating through your heart, which is a lovely thing too, and the heart has its own intelligence and all that. But to say you need to experience God through your body, that is touching into a new field again. And people have a little touchy feeling to that because, again, this thing of that anything that's very bodily experienced is considered the original part of the original sin, especially if it's pleasurable, especially if you like it and you enjoy the whole thing.
So I think it depends on the intention, right? So people can become slaves of their sexuality. One of the things I teach when I work with my clients, the primary thing is to becoming sexually sovereign, where they own their sexual energy and they use their sexual energy as a tool and move the energy and like what you're talking about, moving it from the base chakras and up the spine. There is a practice in which to do that. And one of my teachers that I worked under, her name is Sama Zadora, she talked a lot about that the average orgasm that happens right now bounces between the two lower chakras like a figure 8. And then it drops out the bottom and it doesn't go up. And that when we have that kind of, it's a like think of it like a bouncy ball that's going around and it's going between the two chakras as a figure 8 really chaotically and then it flows down. And then when that happens, there's this innate craving for more, right? This desire. And then when that happens, then our sexual energy drives us. And the majority of the planet is driven by their sexual energy. And what I have attuned in my own body is to have complete control over my sexual energy and when and how to use it. And then I've also taught myself how to do, as you were talking about, bringing up the channels of my body. And I use it as creative flow and creative energy to create, to write, to create art, to do all sorts of things because I've been practicing it. But it's interesting that you were talking about that because so I first found out that my body could do that in 2013 in Thailand. I was living on this island studying in this yoga university and I found Tantra for the first time. And I've talked about this actually quite a bit on the show. I had a yoni massage and it was the first time now I call them a cervical orgasm. I had energy shoot up my spine, out the top of my head, out my fingertips. And I was high for days and I could go to the gym and work out or be dancing and work out and have a full body orgasm because I was in that erotic flow and I was eating extremely clean. I was working out. I was doing yoga. I was meditating. I was in a higher frequency place, but the sex magic is really what kind of was that tipping point to bring me over. And I remember in Thailand, a lot of people usually are driving little mopeds around. And I got off my moped on the wrong side and I singed the back of my leg real bad because the exhaust is there. And if you get off on the wrong side, like those of us who have ridden mopeds understand. And it was like a sound and like it almost went down to like the muscle. Like it was really bad. And I was in such an enlightened state and I was so acutely aware of everything. Mind you, I was actually consistently having to look at the ground and make sure my feet were on the ground because I felt like I was floating above the earth consistently. Don't know if this energy is sustainable in modern day life. It was a little chaotic, but I'm grateful that I went through this experience. And I remember like the first reaction in my body was like, oh, F, oh my goodness, I can't curse. So all the curse words. And then I remember stopping. This was like 30 seconds. And then I remember stopping. I took a deep breath and I anchored my energy and I took my hand and I hovered it like a few inches off my leg in the place where the intense burn was. And I said, you are healed. You are safe. You are healed. You are light. Everything is okay. And instantly the pain went away. And the craziest part about it is I don't have one little bit of scar in that spot. And I went to 2 days later, actually, I went to a Vipassana meditation, which is a 10-day silent meditation. I was deep in a spiritual healing, grieving journey. And there was another girl who had the same injury and she actually had it on the same day. And I kept doing that meditation with my leg. And by the end of the 10 days, there was no scab, no scar. It was good. And hers was still needed a dressing on it. And I believe it is from the sex magic rituals that I was having, being attuned, and like I healed myself with my own hand. And I think that's what Jesus and Mary were doing. They were using their hands to heal people.
Yes, they were. They were indeed doing that. But they also had a very high level of consciousness.
Yeah.
And when you live in a state of okay, I went to meditation school in Iowa. I went to Maharishi International University. So I also have some experience with deep meditation and talking about enlightenment as a process. So we talked very much about the different states of consciousness, and that from waking, sleeping, nor daily consciousness, you can go into then the meditation consciousness, which is a fourth state of consciousness where you transcend.
Mm-hmm.
And after meditating for a while and doing other cleansing processes, you can go into the cosmic consciousness, which is a more unified form of consciousness, where you also sense that you're part of everything. You're part of everything is alive, and you're part of God's big green creation in a new kind of way. And then the next step of that is that you come to unity consciousness, and then you feel unified with it all. And we talked about it like that. And when you hear about how Jesus did the miracles, how they healed people just by his presence, just all these things that he did, because he was in such a high level of consciousness, everything else around him would just tune to his frequency, and that will heal. That will almost just, how can I put that? It's an almost instant healing process where the unhealthy part of the body cannot exist in that frequency, the high frequency that is being presented. So the
disease just dissolves.
It will just resolve. It will just resolve. And that's what he did. And he could even heal then thousands of people just by being there. And there is actually there's a hieroglyphs, there's a carving in the catacombs. There's a little bit of hints that he had a little device, that Jesus had a little piece that he could hold in his hand that would extend his energy. And it was a ruby stone or some sort of fantastic stone that would just transfer his energy and just amplify it. So you can see it. He's holding a little stick, little piece. And we don't really know exactly what that was, but that it was some sort of tool that he could use also to just extend himself further.
Yeah. So your book, for clarification for those, you have your original version, which is the one I read originally. It's called Rituals in Sacred Stone. And now you've taken it apart a little bit, and you have released part 1 of a 3-part series.
Yes.
And you've extended the chapters and refined them a bit.
I've edited them myself, and I also sent them to a professional editor.
And then you added to them.
And then I added 7 extra chapters to it.
Yeah. And so you're taking it, which I think is a great idea, because the original book's like over 500 pages.
It's $4.99. It's pretty much exactly 500 pages, because that was the limit I had. Otherwise, it would go into a different price range. So to keep it the way it was, I needed to. So that's why the printing is a little small in it. And
so
but they worked with me to do it that way.
So you're upgrading it, and then you're about to launch your first Audible, which everyone is so excited about.
Yes, and it will come through ASAP. But I've been promising that for a while, I know, but I've had some technical problems with this.
So how do we find your book?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
It's available on Amazon. It's Mary Magdalene, Rituals in Sacred Stone, and Wencke Braathen is spelled WENCKE BRAATHEN.
And they can buy the old copy as well still, or the new copy.
Yep.
The old copy is the whole story.
Yep.
and then the new version, and then you're working on the second of the
Yep.
trilogy series right now. Do you know any idea when that one's going to be available?
It won't be until next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the third one, we don't know.
Well, after that again. On the other hand, it was the first part I had to work the most with, because I felt that I became a better writer as I wrote as I continued writing. So the first segment was the one that needed most work. So I don't think the next segment will need so much work the same way, but we'll see. We'll see.
That's really exciting. So if you are curious about Mary Magdalene and you want to learn more, I highly recommend getting her book. It's like I would say, I jokingly say it's like the Bible meets Outlander meets Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Is a really good answer.
Wonderful answer. It's visionary historical fiction. I did a lot of research on the Roman Empire and all the Roman officials and what they did, because I wanted to know the backstory of that. I did a lot of research on Jewish history, of where the different tribes went and what happened. I traveled to Egypt. I needed to see and feel the Egyptian, even though they're the ones who could see a lot of, because they made everything in stone, and got a feel for that. And then I traveled in southern France, where she was exiled to. And I needed to walk in her footsteps there. And that was very powerful and gave me a huge inspiration for developing it further. And then I needed to spend several years of just, what is the secrets of being a female human being? Why is that so different than being a male human being? And what is the power within the feminine psyche? What is it? And I needed to, because I got interested in Mary Magdalene when I was very young. And I was like 15, 16 years old when I decided that the Bible, it must be missing some chapters. And I wanted to write those chapters with the arrogance of a 15-year-old. But anyway,
You did.
I did.
In your own way.
Eventually I did. But of course, at that time, there was nothing to study. Now there are several things in an academic level.
There's so many
There's
books
so
now.
much written about her. So now, but that,
I'm so
all that came after 1987, after Holy Blood, Holy Grail. That was the
We
first
couldn't
one.
even get a copy of her gospel until 1995.
Exactly.
And it was we found it at the later end of the 1800s.
So after year 2000, there's been a whole plethora of books about her. But I didn't know that at that time. So I needed to live my life. And I'm born in 1958. So I needed to live my adult life from the 70s and on, and explore what it is to be female. So I married, I gave birth to 4 children. The whole motherhood piece, the whole thing of being pregnant and births and nursing and all this stuff, that's such a powerful part. The whole monthly cycle, where you can tune into the earth and the cosmos and all these things. There's so much mystical stuff that women can get deeper and deeper into. And that got me to the mystery schools. I went that route to get more into her. But then I needed the historical background as well. So I studied the Roman Empire. I studied the different cultures that were very much alive and well at their time. And then I got into the mystery school as well. Oh gosh, these places existed, and they communicated with each other, and there was no competition between them. There was more a support system. You could come from one mystery school and go to another one and say, I've learned all this. I'd like to learn what your expertise is. And people will welcome that.
I love one of the things I love in the book is how they communicate with each other non-verbally.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
And I have gotten so attuned. I actually haven't told you this. I would say 99% of the time when I call somebody, they're like, oh my God, I was just about to call you, or I was just thinking about you instantly, or I was just talking about you, like literally. And everybody's always telling them, like, wow, I'm getting more attuned to reading minds, especially outside. And it happens like all the time, constantly, which is really fun.
I think we're coming to a point now where all of that will not be seen so much as a super special ability, but will be something that we tune into, just because humanity as a whole is going through an initiation.
Yeah.
And
Tell me about it.
Exactly. And
With all the solar flares that are happening, I
Mhm.
have an app on my phone and they were up crazy this weekend. I've been so tired. I've been sleeping a lot because of it. But unfortunately, we only have about 2 or 3 minutes left. So we have to round up. You have a social media that you've been a little bit more active on, which is how I actually found you, was on Facebook. But you have an Instagram as well.
yes, and I've been doing a little bit more on that. And
Can you tell us what it is? If they wanted to find you.
It's my name, but
Okay.
it's how is it?
It's Braathen Wencke.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was backwards. But
BRAATHENWENCKE. And then you can go to Amazon and get Rituals in Sacred Stone. I highly recommend it. And then if y'all want to go to Rose Heartsong, roseheartsong.com, and join my email list, I will happily share when the Audible is out, because I know that we've all been waiting for that for so long. And it's your lovely voice, which is so easy to listen to.
Thank you.
I'm so incredibly grateful to have you in my life. Thank you for being here. It's amazing how much I do get to see you, even though you live in Chicago.
Yeah, we do get together.
I know. It's been such a lovely day spending with you here in Laguna Beach. This is KXFM. This is Laguna's Community Radio. And this is Follow Your Heartsong with Rose Heartsong. And our amazing guest, Wencke Braathen. We talked all about Mary Magdalene and Rituals in Sacred Stone. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I hope you all out there have a beautiful night. And remember to tune in every single Sunday from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. here on KXFM, Laguna's Community Radio. And for those who are listening, you, the listener, make the difference. If not, it would just be me and Wencke on the phone like we usually are. So thank you so much for listening in. And I hope you have the most beautiful night ever.
You felt that, didn't you? Let it sink in, take what you need, leave the rest, and always trust yourself. If this spoke to you, please follow, like, and share. That helps the message reach those who need it. Stay wild, stay free, and keep following your